up? We got another Q&A with Bro Diallo. I'm doing this out of appreciation to all of the subscriptions. People have been working to try to get my number of subscribers up so that I can go back to broadcasting my radio show. Wow. It's rainy as hell. All right, let's cut. All right, I'm doing this live because it's been a long time since I did a Bro Diallo show Q&A, and as Carl said, I got over 100 subscribers in 2 days, which I haven't gotten 100 subscribers in 2 months. I've been broadcasting my show on YouTube for 9 months. And then they told me I couldn't broadcast it anymore because I didn't have 1,000 subscribers, so I couldn't use my phone that I've been using. Long story short, I need 1,000 subscribers before I can go back to my old way of doing my show, broadcasting over the air, the internet, Facebook, and YouTube. So I'm up to 890, and just Friday I was at 737. So that's beautiful. So even though I'm on Facebook broadcasting the Q&A, I'm only going to answer questions that come in from YouTube. I'm not answering questions. So if you have questions for Bro Diallo, questions for me about various topics, and if I don't know the answer, we'll work it out together, or I'll try to refer you to where you can find a better answer than I'm able to give. Y'all know how it goes. This is our 10th Q&A with Bro Diallo, and I appreciate y'all. And I hope y'all can get something out of my answers. But before I do that, every single time I've done a Q&A, I've had Christopher Marshall come on and ask me about specific texts for statecraft. So before I started this show, I went and got some specific texts because I always talk about the necessity for statecraft amongst African people and how many of our organizations, they fight for rights, they fight for economic liberation, they fight for education. We fight for so much. But what we never seem to understand that until we control the apparatus of the state, we'll still be at the whim of other people who can grant us right or take away our rights, grant us reparations, and then collapse the currency in which they paid us reparations. So ultimately, we need control of the state, and we need to learn how to govern the state. And statecraft is one of the projects, one of the human areas of interactions that Black people, especially of the diaspora, have been denied the most. We've been in business, we've opened businesses, and we've been in entertainment, we've been in academia, we've been involved even in governance. But governance is related to, but it's not exactly the same as the construction and maintenance of your own state, governing someone else's state. So anyway, let's do at least the top 5 statecraft books and maybe one bonus book. One book is Facing Mount Kenya by Jomo Kenyatta. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of Jomo Kenyatta's actions when he took control of the state, his in-depth understanding of African ideological foundations of governance and philosophy are great. So Facing Mount Kenya, of course, I don't have my copy of it and I don't see it, which is The Reconstruction of African Civilization, which I know Chris has a copy of, and also Obo Tishaka's 2-volume book, The Art of Leadership. Those are another 2 books, but I know you have those. So Facing Mount Kenya. Another book that I refer to on my show quite a bit because I really want to encourage Black people to rebel against the state, and how white people don't even adhere to their own values and codes when it comes to governance and the social contract. But Jean-Jacques Rousseau's social contract, if you really want to understand statecraft in a modern state and the origins, you got to know where you come from to get to know where you're going. So the states that we're living under. So the statecraft, here's another book that is pretty nuts and bolts. This is a book called Public Administration. Public Administration, this is an older edition, so I don't know if they've improved, but it's pretty clear cut. I like some of these books because they lack any ideological slant. I mean, it's Western governance in a Western modern state, but if you understand like facing Mount Kenya and other African ideological and philosophical groundings, then you can take these books. These are what are called the canon of Western political science, and use them and work them to our benefit. Another book which I really, really like, this book is James Wilson's Bureaucracy. A lot of people are anti-bureaucracy. I tend to be pro-bureaucracy. I'm not sure why. I know why we don't like bureaucracy, because when we think of bureaucracy, we think of Western bureaucracy. But bureaucracy and the breakdown and distribution of labors, how to prioritize the components of the state, and how to prioritize, how to redistribute or accumulate resources for the state. You need a bureaucracy for a modern state. And I know bureaucracy is an ugly word, but I think one of the reasons why people hate bureaucracy so much is because there's such little understanding of it and the necessity. Another classic book, City Politics, by Judd, which is another book, pretty clear cut. But this is a book some of you might be surprised that I would recommend in terms of statecraft, and that's the Black church and the African American experience. Because Black people, we, by necessity, not by default, have kind of had to turn our Black churches into economic, governing, political, and even entertainment, psychological health, resource pooling, community self-defense and reliance. All of those things are rooted in the church. So I think that we who shun the ideology, the rhetoric, and the ultimate mission of the church can gain from looking at the methodology of the church. So those are the, I meant to do 5, but okay, 6 books that I recommend for statecraft. Okay, let's get some Q&A. And again, I'm not answering questions on Facebook Live. I'm just broadcasting on Facebook Live. All questions I will answer only on YouTube, because this is an appreciation for YouTube video. So let's start with and please subscribe to YouTube. If I can get 110 more followers, then I can go back to broadcasting. So let's see what okay, first question from Carl. Carl, what are your thoughts on the involuntarily celibate movement, or incels? Actually, from the incel movement, as I read up on it, it actually was rooted in something positive. It wasn't a term of mockery. It was really a term started by a feminist woman to talk about how people are alienated and the inability of people to connect. Diallo Kenyatta, if you're looking for me on YouTube, it's Diallo Kenyatta all together. Diallo Kenyatta at Diallo Kenyatta on YouTube. I tried to share the link on my, wait, I'm going to be sharing this. I'll share the link on my Facebook just now. But the incel movement wasn't just about men. It was actually men and women who were unable to connect intimately, romantically, with an understanding of the alienating culture of relationships, because relationships have been commodified, where a relationship is not a natural human occurrence that people engage in, but it's something you have to earn through the accumulation of housing and transportation and ongoing employment. So all these factors that can be sometimes out of the reach of people will put you in a position where you are not worthy to engage in, or to be loved, or to share the love that you have. But of course, it got captured by the alt, the right wing white men who pretty much ignore the fact that there are alienated and lonely women who were also, and in the early parts of the incel movement, it was basically people coming online saying, I am alone, I am lonely, and I am interested in connecting sexually, intimately, emotionally with other people. But because of my material or other circumstances within or just outside of or completely outside of my control, I don't have that ability. So it was supposed to be create a community of people who could connect, men and women. But again, I think what I really think about it is, I think it's seems like a white issue, seems like a white thing for white people. Uh, White people not only have their reproduction or reproductive capacity collapsed throughout the Western world. And everywhere from Israel to Italy, they're having trouble sustaining their populations. And in some other modern Western society, same thing with Japan. And I think they have more of a trouble. It's really a white thing, even though we do have our intimate, romantic, and sexual issues within our community. Involuntary celibacy, I don't think is one of them. Those white folks' problems, first world problems. That's my ultimate thing, and I think it's an interesting phenomenon for us to watch from a distance, but not anything we should get in the middle of as far as white folks' business. I hope that's an adequate answer. Uh, okay, let's see. Good question though. It's curious. We should watch it because these incels are going on shooting sprees. Thank you, Kendake. Okay, let's go to the next question. Citizen for Gabon. Shout out to Gabon. Do I have an opinion on the newly elected mayor of Chicago? Yes, I do have an opinion. I did not vote for her. In the primary, I voted for Representative LaShawn K. Ford, and I also worked on his campaign. In the runoff election, I voted for Tony Prepwinkle specifically to try to stop Lightfoot from coming to power. I don't think that Lightfoot has an organic relationship with the Black community. I don't think she has the interest of the Black community at heart, and I don't think that she feels that she owes any political or debt to the Black community. Also, I think it is an insult to our intelligence for the campaign, her campaign, to tell us that she is not a machine, because they promoted Lori Lightfoot as an alternative for the Democratic machine politics in Chicago. But she worked on and was appointed by both the Daley administrations and the Rahm administrations. So how can you work for the Daley and Rahm administrations, but you're outside of the political machine? So that was a fundamental insult to our intelligence. Secondly, she was a prosecutor, yet she claims she holds to progressive politics. You cannot be a progressive prosecutor. You just can't. It's not possible. There's no way for you to hold progressive political views. And when she wasn't working as a prosecutor to lock up poor Black people, she was working as a corporate lawyer to enhance the profits of predatory corporations and to make sure they did not come under the law. They were able to avoid regulations and other penalties for their crimes. So Lori Lightfoot, if she governs in any way that's consistent with her record, it's going to be a problem. And also, I fear that because she's Black, she's a woman, and she's a lesbian, that's going to put a lot of marginalized communities in a sleep, because they're going to believe falsely that she can empathize with the struggles, because I mean, she has been a victim herself of compounding oppression as a woman, as a lesbian, and as a Black person. But I think because she has the neoliberal point of view that, well, I'm a Black woman, I'm a lesbian, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps, then I believe that other people can too. That's that neoliberal attitude. So I think that I could be wrong. Now, on her political platform, she does have some progressive policies, but so did Obama. And all of Obama's progressive policies, he left them right on the podium after he gave his last pre-election campaign speech. Obama ran as a progressive. He ruled or governed as a conservative. Now, Lori Lightfoot lived her and raised up her career as a centrist, a political centrist, a right-leaning centrist. Then she ran as a progressive, a leftist progressive, but I believe that she's going to govern as a right-leaning centrist. But if she's wrong, I'll be the first one to get on here and do the Holy Ghost dance and say I was wrong. She held up her end of the bargain, but I don't think I'm wrong on this. White folks love her to death. I was just reading the Chicago Tribune. There's so much amongst the white majority in this city. There is so much Lori Lightfoot porn. They love this woman, and they love her too much for me to trust her. What are your thoughts on adoption, stealing of African children? Should Black folks be more encouraged to adopt? Yes. Black people should adopt, especially these Black people who claim to be anti-abortion. A lot of these Black people who have all this rhetoric about the Black family and all that. The first thing I ask any Black person that talks about, oh, we're going genocide of abortion, I ask, how many children do you foster or adopt? I think more Black people, but I understand the hurdles. My wife and I actually on 2 separate occasions went and took the foster. You have to go through a series of classes, depending on what city you're in. It could be anywhere from 8 weeks to 2 months of foster parent adoption, and or foster parent training. And even if you want to adopt, you still have to go through the fostering process first. But it was really not anything. My wife and I decided to step away from it because it is a very, very, very toxic environment. The best thing to do, the first step, is if you have people in your family with children that are struggling, is to support the people in your family that are struggling, to keep your nieces, nephews, cousins, younger siblings out of the system. That's step one, is keeping them out of the system. Whatever you got to do, keep them out of the system. Because once they're in the system, there's a whole new, not only do you have the problems that led to them being in the system, then there's a whole new layer of stress and pain that you're going to have to go through to navigate the system. So I do support Black adoption. I support Black fostering. But before any of that, I support Black families re-engaging in communalism, keeping up with your siblings and other relatives and family members to make sure that they have the material means and the emotional support to keep their children out of the system in the first place. But yeah, it's really insane how many of our children, and I think that we should discourage, if we don't have the power to absolutely outlaw, white people adopting Black children. And I know a lot of good white people might be hurt by that, but I mean, the history is too deep. There is not one continent that white people set up settler colonies. The United States is a settler colony. Australia is a settler colony. New Zealand is a settler colony. South Africa is a settler colony. Probably the only settler colony that has not engaged in the European settlers engaging on an aggressive program to take children from the natives or from the oppressed, enslaved, colonized, subjected, or subjugated population, to take their children and enculturate and raise up their children. And the only place that hasn't been done is Israel. Israel, I mean, they've committed all the other crimes of imperialism and settler colonialism, but the one thing they do not do is go out and try to bring Palestinian youth into Zionist or Israeli or Jewish homes. But there was a campaign to bring in, if they don't even bring them in homes, they bring them into orphanages. So I think we have to be against that. And one of the ways to do that is avoid allowing Black children to fall into the grasp of Division of Family Services, and to make a point, if you have the space, the room, the materials, and the psychological strength and the emotional maturity to adopt or foster Black children, by all means, do it. And if you are not in the position to do it yourself, get out there and support other people who are doing it. Become a big brother, big sister, mentor, rites of passage program. And this isn't even about the goodness of your heart. I mean, it's warfare. This is an act of war. I mean, it's really It's not just about, happy babies and children. It's about the survival and well-being of our people in totality. Okay, the next question. I was diagnosed bipolar and I found out quickly that there's absolutely no real mental health service for people of African descent. Are there any books you can think of that may help? Let me tell you authors. Let me tell you authors because they have a myriad of books. But Dr. Naeem Akbar, who is a psychologist, he has, well, I'll tell you some of the books too. He has The Community of Self and Visions for Black Men. Since you are, at least as far as your online persona, you are a Black male, a Black man. Visions for Black Men and The Community of Self, especially The Community of Self. Go ahead. Um, then, of course, Dr. Amos Wilson, who is a great African psychologist. Dr. Amos Wilson and his series of books on psychological development of African children and the falsification of African consciousness. So Dr. Bobby E. Wright is another, and they have all of three of these men, Dr. Bobby E. Wright, Wilson, and Akbar. They also have several lectures, and I believe at least up till the mid 2000s, Dr. Akbar was relatively accessible, where you could call him. Another person, Dr. Marimba Ani, in her book "Let the Circle Be Unbroken," is another one. A black side, and then finally another person who is relatively accessible. If you go online, you could probably send him an email or get his contact at his university. Is Dr. Wade B. Nobles. So those are the authors in there, and don't just limit yourself to books. They have lectures. Sometimes they speak at conferences that you can attend, and so yeah, you African centered or Black African Afrocentric psychology is definitely where you want to go. So I hope you have it. And like I said, Marimba Ani, Dr. Akbar, and Dr. Nobles, they're still in practice. They're still around and relatively accessible. Although Dr. Wright and Dr. Wilson have passed on, they have a lot of material out there that's accessible. Okay, next. What's your opinion on the hypocrisy of the gangster rap community and Kodo Black's ignorance, which they help to produce? Okay, yeah. To me, I think that first of all, Black and working class, Black poor and working class Black people, I think this entire, not the Nipsey Hussle murder, but the responses to the Nipsey Hussle murder should inform us of the class stratification within the Black community. Black lives do not matter to the Black elites. They are showing us that they measure our lives with the same yardstick that white people measure our lives to. They use the amount of fiat capital you have is directly proportional to how much they value our lives. So I think the classism, which is something we don't have a class analysis in the Black community, and we're suffering because of it. But anyway, Kodak Black is on record saying that he doesn't like dark-skinned Black women. He has been accused on more than one occasion of rape. He has finally been indicted and will stand trial for raping of a high school, of a child. Not to say raping an adult woman, but he's raped a young lady. And the young lady was afraid to go to the police. And she eventually told, I think, the school nurse or her teacher, and the school nurse and teacher encouraged her to go to the authorities. So Kodak Black has been disrespecting Black women, disparaging, and this is a young man who's on a world platform. Like right now, as he was brought up the charges, he's on tour right now. He's in Georgia, he's going to Carolinas, he's on a nationwide tour, has toured the world, is world famous minstrel. And he has taken his message of dark-skinned Black women are ugly, dark-skinned Black women have less value, black people of murder. And another thing, the psychological warfare of flaunting their diamonds and their money and their fur and their Gucci, Louis, Fendi, flaunting this material goods, promoting consumerism and materialism and devaluing people who don't have the fiat currency to secure this senseless blood diamonds and blood gold. So he has been an anti-African, anti-black minstrel throughout his career. And also throughout his career, he has been embraced, promoted, and collaborated with by all these artists that are now out to condemn him because it took him dissing one. He dissed all black women over a year ago. He disrespected every dark-skinned black woman on the planet, and he wasn't denounced. He dissed one wealthy black woman, and I'm not saying it's appropriate to diss any women, but he dissed Laura London, and all of a sudden, he's got hits put out on his head. You got all these BJ Knockout, T.I., and all these other rappers who have a history of misogyny condemning him. So this isn't about valuing women. This is about valuing the amount of money women have, which is also dehumanizing. So I think these rappers are showing that they are in a class of their own. They are not worthy of our support. The only time they want to help us or give back to us is to help a few of us hand-picked individuals to reach the class that they're in. The only thing they want to do is reproduce more black class enemies. So I think poor and working class black people have to acknowledge, sadly, because we love these people, they inspire us, blah, blah, blah. But we have to conclude that the interest and values of the black elites are counter, not just different, not just separate, but against the interest and values of the masses. So we have to fight an internal class struggle, just like we have to fight an external racial struggle. So we might as well start doing it. But I wish this would turn and allow black people to stop worshiping, celebrating, and enriching these so-called celebrities, but it won't. But at least it gives us an opportunity to talk about classism. Because I really think that if you haven't, if it took Laura London for you to denounce Kodak Black, then you're as much an enemy of the people. And you're just as much devalue the worth of black women as Kodak Black does. A woman shouldn't have to be a multimillionaire to get you to speak up on her behalf or to denounce black men who make a career of dehumanizing black women. So I'm not impressed by all these brothers calling out Kodak Black all of a sudden. Okay. Oops, Chris. So I've listened to all your shows and I've learned so much. And you often talk about choke points that black people can attack in white power structure. Can you talk about those choke points? Good question. What he's referring to is I'm saying that there are places where the system is vulnerable to black people. And we don't have to have a grand revolution to overthrow all the systems and institutions of global white domination in order to enjoy levels of freedom, empowerment, and mobility. So what I encourage black people to do, and until we have our grand, glorious global revolution, we can target certain choke points within the system. We can target certain vulnerable areas or certain areas where whites are so divided that if black people came together as a mass, we could flip an issue one way or the other. So one of the choke points is electoral politics. And the vast majority of the large urban centers, Houston, Chicago, New York City, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Atlanta, Georgia, St. Louis, Missouri, Kansas City, Missouri, Colorado Springs, there are certain areas where you have some economic and cultural hubs of the United States, where white people are divided as far as Democrat and Republican. And if black people came together and formed a plebiscite or formed what is called a voting bloc, which is Malcolm X told us to do this over half a century ago, black people can literally write up a platform, a political platform, and impose that on the political atmosphere as long as but not only do we not all vote together, we mostly don't vote at all. So city politics. Now, black people, you got a lot of people like Dr. Umar who tell black people not to vote because you don't vote. There's only one public office, one in the entire United States that is a nationally elected office. There's only one, and that's the president of the United States. The president is really, literally one man out of literally hundreds of thousands of elected officials. Hundreds of thousands, from city council to mayor to treasurer to water reclamation district to people like to say dog catcher, but I don't know if anywhere you still vote for dog catcher. But county sheriff, for the sheriff, for your state legislature, your state house, your governor, all of these are regional offices where the politician is very vulnerable and very accessible. Like the Cook County board president, she lives about 6 blocks from me. And this is a very powerful position that controls a significant amount of resources. And they count on Black self-disenfranchisement as much as they count on voter manipulation and purging voter rolls. So one of the choke points where whites are very vulnerable, where we can impose our will if we would just organize ourselves, is local electoral politics. And if you get a stranglehold, now when I was in Kansas City, shout out to MBuff. I mean, somebody should write this history. At one point in Kansas City, Missouri, a Black leftist organization had significant control on the city council, the elected school board. They had the mayor in their back pocket, and they controlled kindergarten up to high school African-centered education. They were the Black. They had everything from accounting firms to law firms to engineering firms, all Black owned, pretty much writing city policy. It was a what they call a bloodless coup d'etat. A bloodless coup d'etat. They even helped us. We were in there. We opened up the very first Black-owned and very first Black-owned vegan restaurant, and not only the first owned Black-owned vegan, but the first Black vegan restaurant in the history of Kansas City, Missouri. And all it took, it wasn't more than 24 people to conceptualize this plan, to go out and reach, and each of those 24 people went out and talked to 5 other people, and it was a coup d'etat. Now, of course, it wasn't consolidated, it wasn't institutionalized, but it could be done. So local politics is a choke point. Another choke point is entertainment. And when I say entertainment, that sports is entertainment. You know, when Jay-Z said all Blacks got is sports and entertainment on Reasonable Doubt, sports is entertainment. Black people have an enormous, an obscene level of an absurd level of influence on entertainment and fashion. Black people are very vulnerable. We can make or break something with a hashtag, Black Twitter. Now, what we could do, all you have to do is, as a people, target one of the major style brands. Let's say Nike. Let's say a good 15 to 20% of Black people say Nike's dead. And not only do we not buy Nike, we don't wear Nike, we don't date people who have Nikes. We don't kick it to, we don't buy artists, we don't watch teams, we don't watch games. Nike's done, because Nike's the biggest. After you take down Nike, taking down Nike, and you ain't gotta destroy Nike. If you know how capitalism works, capitalism, just like politics, functions in the margins. If Nike said, due to this Black for, and we ain't even got to say why. We ain't even got to say we're doing, but we're just saying Nike's done. Nike's through. As far as we're concerned, white folks, y'all can wear Nikes. And Nike, on its semi-annual fiscal report, say, our projections, we're about 2 to 3% off on our projections. That will cause a scramble. All these investors, all of these parasitic capitalists are going to run from Nike like, I don't know what it is. And then after that, we could walk up to any style, any brand and say, listen, you saw what we did to Nike. And, Adidas is next and then Reebok. Unless we understand the infrastructure. We understand the raw materials, the rubber, the leather, even for the machinery, the lubricants for the factory machines. Y'all gonna give us an end on some of that. We're gonna corner the market on some. On shipping, you got to give us a part of raw materials, manufacturing, shipping, storage, distribution, and we want at least 25% of your revenues to go to Black promotional firms. And yeah, call it extortion, call it intimidation, call it a shakedown. That's what the Chinese did. The Chinese said, yeah, we can give you cheap labor, but you're going to have to, you come open up a business, you'll make big money in China. But, you're going to have to use these contractors. You're going to have to use, I mean, it's so easy to do. And it's a win-win-win. There's no vulnerability. Now, right now, this kind of stuff isn't illegal. I mean, what's his name? Claude Anderson laid it out in Powernomics, in group economics. I mean, that's what gets done to us. They go to an African country and they find the choke points. They try the tribal divisions. They look at the youth versus the old, and they get into those choke points. So just on a political level and a marketing brand level, just wherever you see that white people are vulnerable to Black people, or where white people have a need for Black people. And what they're going to do is when they see us moving that way, they're going to work hard to replace us. So we can't use Black basketball players and ball chasers to push Nike anymore. Let's go to Scandinavia. Let's go get some African soccer or African football players. And that's why everything you got to do got to be global. Got to be multi-level. It's got to be long-term. But those are just two examples of where we ain't got to shoot no guns. We ain't got to march in the street and get sprayed with tear gas. We can sit down in rooms and just say, okay, plan A. Name a brand. Put a bunch of brands on it and throw a dart. Boom. Okay, Walmart. But then again, we need a high level of community cohesion, community cooperation, and we need to be able to articulate the rewards that will come as a result of the sacrifices that we ask our people to make, which is not a large sacrifice. You don't wear Nikes. There's 50 other brands of shoes you can floss in or ball out in. But moving on. Is there an African scientific method that predates Marx in terms of interpreting phenomenon? Absolutely. You want to look up Dr. Charles Finch. Dr. Charles Finch is a physician and a scientist that he does all the research on, African sciences, everybody from Imhotep and the African Black pre-European, and just before Marx, it goes back to the European philosophers and the start of European philosophy and European scientific method. So I will refer you to Dr. Charles Finch and his research. And one of his most popular books is The African Origins of Medical Science. And again, he has both lectures and text. So Dr. Charles Finch. I actually had an opportunity to see that brother speak publicly in Harlem way back before some of y'all was born. Okay, next. I asked Diallo about this before. We don't have those resources to cater our specific. Oh, okay. That's just somebody talking to somebody. That's a private conversation. And again, if you're watching on Facebook, I'm not answering questions on Facebook. I want to encourage everyone to go to my YouTube and subscribe to my YouTube, because I need to get to 1,000 followers. Because basically, if I don't have 1,000 followers, at least it won't allow me to maneuver like I need to maneuver with broadcasting my show. Anyway, excuse me. Let's go to the next question. Okay, are there any areas where Pan-Africanists and Black integrationists can come together for liberation? Absolutely not. We can't come together for liberation because integration is the antithesis of liberation. That's like saying, is there any way rapists can come together with feminists? I mean, no, because they want exactly the opposite thing. Integrationists want to be full-fledged Americans. They want the full rights, opportunities, status, and standing. Integrationists seek to become CEOs. They seek to become president of the United States. They seek to become soldiers in the military of the empire. They seek to become not just become capitalists, but become vastly successful capitalists, which means they're willing to exploit the labor of other human beings and destroy the ecosystems of the planet to become successful. So no, Black integrationists cannot ally with Black Pan-Africanists for liberation. There's no grounds. Now, Black liberationists and Black integrationists that live in the same physical proximity can come together to say, hey, police brutality. They are killing Black youth. And we want to stop police brutality. Black integrationists want to stop police brutality because if you are being brutalized or set aside by the police, that means you are not equal to your master. So one of the things you have to do to live and dwell and on equal footing with your master is not be subject to police brutality. And that means you have to have your full civil and human rights respected by the tax-paid civil servants. So integrationists want to stop police brutality. Pan-Africanists want to stop police brutality because regardless of the laws, regardless of the Constitution, regardless of our citizenship rights, we think that Black people have inherent value, have fundamental human value, regardless of whatever piece of paper, birth certificate, passport, documentation, citizenship. We don't give a damn about that. We think that Black people have inherent value. So when it comes to saying, hey, we're going to have a march, we're going to have a petition drive, we're going to try to oust this particular prosecutor or this particular cop, we can maybe work together with the integrationists. But the integrationist mind state is, I want to get more Black officers on the force. Whereas the Pan-African things is, I want to dissolve the force. I want to remove not only the Black officer, but every officer. There should be no Chicago Police Department. There should be no U.S. military. So even though we can come together to say, hey, in the immediate, stop killing us and our children, in the long run, we're going to hit a severe conflict. So no, we can't come together for liberation because the integrationists don't want liberation, but there are arenas where we can work together. Let's say there's a beloved Black bookstore in your community, and you guys want to have a drive to sustain and make sure that the bookstore, it generates enough revenue. So you're supporting the bookstore because you want to have Black people have access to the information and the knowledge that's in the books. The integrationist is supporting the bookstore because they think that a Black business is evidence of our further integration and our further elevation within the systems of our oppression. But you both want the bookstore open, so y'all could work together on that. I write today. I spent hours on the farm. I planted some I don't even remember what I planted. I planted some red leaf and green leaf lettuce. I planted some organic arugula, and I planted some gourds. Now, an integrationist can come work with me to sustain a garden. I'm sustaining a garden because I think Black people need to know sustenance farming and agriculture. I think we need to be in any conditions anywhere in the world and make that land productive for our use. Whereas the integrationist just wants to come there and just have a little time out in the sun, but they think that the Western food system and the Western capitalist food market and production system is just fine, except we just need more Black farmers. We don't need more Black corporate farmers. Really, we don't need any more farmers. We produce enough food to feed the world 2 times over. We need a better food distribution system. But anyway, not for liberation. There are things you ain't got to shun them. You can party with integrationists. You can go worship with integrationists. You can work on short-term relief for your community from everything from homelessness to police brutality. But when it comes time for liberation, more times than not, the integrationists are going to be on the other side fighting against you with our enemies. But I know y'all got a good heart because all of us got integrationists all up in our family. Okay, another question. I'm gonna try to move a little faster because it's almost dinner time. Another question. I'm from DC, and because of gentrification, I'm coming into some money. If you come into, let's say, hypothetically, $200,000, what would you do with that money on a Pan-African level? Uh, I would use that money as a seed for a Pan-African cooperative enterprise and a Pan-African cooperative enterprise incubator. I would put at least 50 G's up, and I would look around depending on where you live. I would look into, well, if it were me personally, I would, because I have a lot of experience in this, I would probably open up a cooperative vegan bakery slash catering service. I would try to set up um, a small businesses or what they call cottage industries. I would also link with some people in the community because there's a lot of people in Chicago that do natural body and household cleaning products. I would mobilize at least half a dozen of them to come up with a series of products, and I would turn these cottage industry, and I would give each of the so-called workers a ownership stake. If they didn't have money to buy in, then I would set up a system for sweat equity, and I would begin to set up a series of cottage industries and what you call cooperative enterprises as an incubator. That's one thing I would do. Another thing I would do was set up a media, independent Pan African media and publishing. There are a lot of, and this is just me. There are probably some things that are more important to do, but this is just me. There are a lot of really grand African textbooks and histories that are written from everyone from Professor William Mackey, Dr. Clark, that are going out of publication, that are being lost to us. And as Chris Marshall is always showing, he shows me, because I own a lot of these books. I always joke that I got to run to the pawn shop. You know, I have books on my shelf that are on Amazon for $900 from some of our great artists, and that's because the books are now rare books, and these books should not only not be rare books, they should be abundant books. So I would begin to set up some type of way to reprint and redistribute. I would try to find whoever holds the license to these books, reach out to groups like A&B Publishing or African World Info System to see if we can work out some type of cooperative agreement where we can make sure these texts, we don't have our own Library of Congress. In Africa, now they're starting to really work on developing state-owned archives and state-owned preservation societies to maintain African intellectual work. You know, like this book, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, has been in publication for hundreds of years. You know, and a brother could write a seminal or a sister could write a seminal book, and we'd be lucky the book is available 30 years later. So those are the probably top two things I would do. I would start a full-fledged cooperative enterprise. I would start a secondary cooperative enterprise incubator, and then I would start some type of archival preservation and republishing enterprise in order to make sure we preserve the African intellectual heritage. Because white folks are literally handpicking Black scholars and Black ideologies that they deem worthy to preserve, and everything else is wasting away. And you got places like the Black Archives in Kansas City, Missouri. You have certain library like Professor William Mackey and just Lerone Bennett. These men are great intellects. They have huge libraries, and nobody knows what happens to their books, to their writings, to their journals. Just puff. Or they might pop up at the Smithsonian, as if we can trust the Smithsonian or the U.S. Library of Congress with our archives. And you know, if Africans somewhere on the African continent or the Caribbean, there was some great tome, some great scroll from some pedophile Greek scholar that they had, they would mobilize a whole army to go and get their intellectual property, their heritage. So that's something we lose every day. I just stress about it, but that's me. If I had came into a blessing. Woo, that's after I do my dance, I get my Holy Ghost dance on. And I'd probably pre-order a copy of Mortal Kombat 11. But that's just my one splurge, $60. That's it. That's my one for myself. You know, us revolutionaries, we gotta. And those three things. cooperative enterprise incubator, archival and preservation investment, and Mortal Kombat 11. That's it. That's what I do. Okay, next question. Well, I'm gonna skip down a little bit. I'm gonna just kind of skip around because we're losing time. Last question. I hope I got to your first question. Last question. What do you think about Nipsey Hussle? The reaction to his death, the impact he had, whether it's good or bad. Only thing I knew about Nipsey Hussle until the day he was shot was I knew he was a rapper. If somebody came to me and say, Nipsey Hussle, what do you know? I said, I know he's a rapper. I know he made that song, Fuck Donald Trump. Oh, nigga, fuck Donald Trump. That was my extent to my knowledge of Nipsey Hussle. That's it. As far as it goes. As far as his, I learned about his $100 mixtape. You know, I learned about his connections with everything from Rockefeller Records to owning the strip mall in Slauson. I have to be honest, I'm rather indifferent to Black entrepreneurialism. Dr. John Henry Clark said, anything that you do that cannot be defined or cannot contribute to the liberation of your people should be thrown in the ash can of history. But I do respect people who engage in enterprise, as I've done myself, to bring resources to the Pan-African or Black liberationist struggle. I have enough respect for that. But if you're doing business for the sake of business, that's what I call hamster wheeling. You're running hard to stay in the same place. So that concept that Jay-Z talked about, buying up the block, that was done in the 70s. Even here in Chicago, I'm doing some research on the city of Chicago, Black Chicago. And for many years, Black people lived under the thumb of white slumlords. And in many of these traditional historical areas where I live in Bronzeville and other places, Black people lived under the thumb of slumlords. And there was a push to get that property in the hands of Black owners. And guess what the Black owners did after almost a decade of struggling, fighting with banks to give loans to Black property investors, fighting with the city and the records and the codes department to allow for Black developers to do their work. And we fought, and the Black people fought and fought. Housing struggle was a serious struggle in Chicago and in New York. And in Los Angeles, everywhere Black people live, everything, we have to struggle to drink out of a damn water fountain. As Kwame Ture said, in order to drink out of a water fountain, when we out at a public water fountain, our tax dollar, we have to share our blood. We had to die just to drink from a damn water fountain, to use a toilet. So we did this. And what happened? They turned around. They turned right around. And the Black property owners became Black slumlords. It's just like with Huey P. Newton. They were getting their heads split open by the cops. So they fought hard. They said, put some brothers on the police force. And he said, when we were first out there, they were doing crossing guards. When we were out there struggling, organizing for the people, it was all these redneck white cops. And they used to go down to the deep South to recruit white people because city white folks believed that Southern white folks were better at managing Black folks. And he said, when we first started the Black Panther Party for self-defense, it was all these rednecks we had to fight against. And lo and behold, we fought to get brothers on the police force. Soon as we got the brothers on the police force, they were busting our heads just as much as the white people. And I found myself more than once telling a cop before he tried to split my forehead open, if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't even have this job. So when it comes to Black people starting businesses, if they're starting businesses for the sake of amassing fiat currency, it often doesn't play out any different than the white people or the Koreans or the Arabs starting business. I don't know if he understood beyond that. Apparently, I've seen some videos where he understood the nature of colonialism. But a lot of people who fought against colonialism, including Jomo Kenyatta, who fought and literally decapitated and murdered colonialists, turned around and became managers and facilitators of neocolonialism. So the solution to white people owning the block is not Black people owning the block. It's the solution to anybody, to white people owning the block, is dissolving private property rights. And I know that's scary. Ooh, you can't have private property. Can I help you? I'm just gotta go to schoolwork. Is black people not owning the block? So I say, oh, that's so distracting. Take that up to your desk. I'll be done here in a minute. All right. Is it plugged in? Yeah. Anyway, sorry about that. I just can't watch him over my shoulder. So I'm not impressed that Nipsey Hussle brought the block. He wasn't the first rags to riches black man to come to the community and replace or displace white property owners. Would he have done? I can't really predict what he would have done in the long term, but up to the point he was murdered, I can't say I'm personally impressed by, buying the block. There's a wonderful book by a man named Jeff Schmidt called Disciplined Minds. And in his research, he found that black property owners, black CEOs, black cops, black doctors, black lawyers, black judges, black politicians demonstrated no better treatment and no better represented the interest of black people, the black masses, than the white ones did. That's the whole reason why I talk about statecraft and institution building. Because it doesn't matter what color you are, what your views are when you join an institution. Whether that's capitalism, the system of capitalism, or you go work for Coca-Cola. I worked in healthcare for over a decade. And almost nothing that happened in healthcare I agreed with. Except for, trauma, like acute treatment, but most of the things they were doing there, how they managed, how they structured, work, everything. But because it's an institution, my personal thoughts about what was happening didn't matter. Anyway, I digress. But I think it's unfortunate Nipsey Hussle or any black person died. But I think it's also offensive to me that many of these murder, death, kill gangster rappers can so value one individual, while they are able to overlook, mock, and even profit from the death of so many other black people. And I ain't heard one of them. I heard a lot of them saying, I won't be releasing any music for a full week in honor of Nipsey Hussle. I heard many of them say, we need to gain truth. I haven't heard one of these rappers say, I will never, ever, in another one of my songs, promote, discuss, or visualize, create the imagery of a black person killing another black person. And all of my songs, my previous category, I will never promote. Now, Buju Banton had to say 10 times over. And really, Buju Banton, since he became a Rastafari and liberty and all that, he wasn't making murder music. They still in 2019, got Buju Banton apologizing and denouncing a song he made in 1989 or whatever, early 90s. And Buju Banton said, not only will I never perform Boom Bye Bye and Arabati Boy Ed, I'll never perform that song, nor will I never make a song of that content. But all these people mourning death and denouncing violence and denouncing the hood. Master P made a video, Snoop Dogg made a video. Hell, they had rappers I didn't know was still around. Noriega, N-O-R-E, said he ain't never coming back to the hood again. They went and dug out Lil Boosie's back, talking about, you can't go to the hood. All these rappers. But not one of them said, I vow to never, ever, ever glorify, promote, or even perform a song that deals with black people doing harm, doing violence to other black people. Not one of them said that. And I'm just waiting for the next hit song. It's almost summertime, so y'all wait with me. Let's see what's going to be the number one banger of the summer of 2019, the Red Summer of 2019, 100-year anniversary of the Red Summer of 1919. Let's see what's going to be the banger. And I bet this can of sparkling water, unsweetened, sodium-free, calorie-free, sparkling water, I bet that the banger of the summer is either going to be degrading, objectifying women, or some dude rapping about killing some other black dudes for less than nothing. What you bet? But we shall see. Or it might be a song where he's objectifying women and killing black people, all in the same song. So, man, fuck these rappers, man. Fuck them. I ain't buying their music. I'm sick. Hey, You got Skip Coon, Add To, Wise Tell you too much positive revolutionary conscious music for us to be fucking with these goddamn race traders. Sick of their asses. And I'm very offended. It ain't Black Lives Matter. To them, it's Black Fiat Matters. But I digress. Do you perceive this need for separation to be the result of predisposition racism? What's your take on multivariate analysis of the neurobiological response across phenotypes with fMRI? Man, what? Anyway, let me just try to say there is no separating from any of this. I'm not a black separatist. Black separatism is not possible. If every single black person went back to Africa, if every white person went back to Europe, if every Native American came off the reservation and held claim to their territory here, and all other things remained the same, we still had a capitalist economy, we still had nuclear power and nuclear weapons, you still had industrial meat production, industrial agriculture, you still had massive ongoing capitalist production and private property ownership. Like right now, there is no escape from none of this. You can't separate. You can physically not be in the like right now. My neighborhood is like 90% black. I walk my dog around the block. If I see a white person, I almost jump. Like, damn, what they doing here? Who they could hear to cut off? Usually white people come here, deliver, drop off packages, and most of our, like our UPS, our mailman is black. I live in a black community. I'm not separate because every breath we take in, we're inhaling their toxins. Every black mother, every non-black mother has dioxin in her breast milk. Right now, we're being bombarded with their R waves. We're about to go global G5, and they have not done no research, no peer-reviewed studies of what these high levels of R waves are doing to our anatomy, physiology, and our DNA. So there's no need to separate from white people. There is a need to overthrow white people. There is a need to subvert the systems and institutions of global capitalism, global imperialism, the global NATO, US armed forces. There is a need to renegotiate the terms, the economic terms. There is a need to to secure the means and methodology, not just the means of production. Because if the people take the means of production and continue production in the same way it's done now, we're still doomed. So we need to take the means of production and fundamentally transform the method of production. So I've never been a black separatist. I'm all for black people getting their own little enclaves, having their own black spaces, but a lot of times I deal with a lot of black people who dwell in these wonderful, beautiful, wholesome black spaces, live in a black community, part of black organizations, work in a predominantly black space, go to a predominantly or traditionally black school, blacker than black, and they have this illusion. They have this illusion that, hey, I've reached the promised land. And like I said, nuclear fallout from Japan, don't recognize it's not nuclear. Japan did not have a nuclear meltdown. Fukushima, the planet Earth had a nuclear meltdown. The plastic in the ocean and the mass extinction that's going on. I don't buy that. I don't buy it. This separation. Mm. And yeah, as far as the multivariate analysis of neurobiological responses, yeah, there are some fundamental gonadal differences. I think if we look at the Iceman's inheritance, there's something to it. We process information, we relate to one and the other and the environment differently. But I've seen, but I'm not gonna get too much more into that because we get kind of beyond talking about. Right. I don't know. I think somebody typing raps on here. I must not have access to peer review material. I actually do have access to peer review. My wife is a college professor, and she has this account that I often go on to for whatever. Um, okay. Last question. How can a social worker develop a Pan-Africanist framework when developing interventions and methods to help the Black community? First, you should educate yourself on Pan-Africanism. And Pan-Africanism, it's really two things that are supposed to merge. There's a Pan-African philosophy or ideology, and then there's the Pan-African agenda. The Pan-African ideology is understanding the cultural, historical, political unity, the necessity of this unity, and the validity of this unity amongst Black people across the world, Black people of the continent and Black people of the diaspora. To understand that we have to come together, even though there is a wide range of diversity amongst African people, there is a central unifying uh, origin and a central unifying enemy or essential unifying conditions that span across the globe and across tribes, across language, across various African cultures. And the Pan African agenda is for all populations of African people, of the developed world and the developing world, to pool our resources and to coordinate our efforts for liberation. So, as a social worker, you can both educate your charges about the ideology and then begin to work in your larger community to work towards the agenda. I always tell people you live in your community, not in your home. A lot of people I know live in their homes. Some of my own neighbors, they live in their homes. And that's where they think, that's where their loyalty starting in. I take care of mine. And then we even have these people that celebrate. I have this guy that's always in my feed talking about the men need to take care of his family. But taking care of your family on a planet that's under extinction, from global warming and carbon emissions and mass species extinction and ocean acidification and methane vents and polar ice caps melting. Taking care of your personal family means uniting with every other conscious family to wage war against the omnicidal system of white domination and capitalism. So I would say, as you educate yourself and educate other people on Pan Africanism, and as far as interventions, that's kind of hard to say because being a beneficiary of social work, and right now my mother, who struggled with addiction and other issues, psychological issues, she has a social worker. It does vary from person to person and condition to condition. But I do believe that what I always say is that our role or our obligation is that we have to make a positive contribution to the just aspirations of our people and other individuals. So I would probably, because it's a person by person situation. When my wife was teaching in Chicago public schools, she used to always run into different various levels of need and tragedy, and there was really no uniform way for her to address it. But I know that because of her own Pan-Africanist ideology and pro-Black liberationist ideology, sometimes you give resources, sometimes you just listen. Or like Bobby Rice said, you just leave people a hell alone. Sometimes you allow people to vent. You be the person that just, intuitive and engaged listener. Other times you need to give them resources. Other times you need to deny their access to certain things or to certain places or limit their access or encourage that they limit their access. So that's kind of a hard one to say, this is one thing you can do every time you go into a situation or you engage with a client. you can do this thing or don't do that. I really can't say. I wish I had a more comprehensive answer than that. Please speak on Tupac and his regression from revolutionary to gangbanger. To be honest with you, I've never saw Tupac as a revolutionary. I actually had the opportunity to meet Tupac, but not in the best conditions. And I had an enormous amount of respect for Tupac because he's a small dude. He was a relatively small dude, but he had a lot of heart. Tupac was in prison or in the jail. He wasn't actually in prison. He was in the jail. And I worked in the clinic at Rikers Island. And they came in and it's like, we're bringing a high profile inmate, clear out all the other inmates. We're bringing this high profile inmate into the prison infirmary because we had to do a chest x-ray screening because there was an epidemic of tuberculosis. So everybody needed a chest x-ray upon entering the facility and exiting the facility. So anyway, I was working as an x-ray tech. Tupac comes in and there was this racist woman who really treated the inmates very poorly. She talked to them like they were subhuman. And 90% of our patients in that infirmary had only been arrested. None of them had 90% of them had never been convicted of a crime. They were simply being detained or housed or held because they couldn't make bail, but they had not yet gone to court and been convicted of whatever the pig said they did. But she was treating them like they were already convicted, and even if they're convicted, and sometimes they bring inmates from upstate. But long story short, I met Tupac, and this woman tried to, just talk down to him, not make eye contact, not explain the procedure to him, and he's like, "I'm not doing this. Get this woman out of here." And I used to always wish that the inmates would exercise their basic human rights because you don't lose all your rights when you're in custody. So he really did what I would always like. Why do they let this woman talk to them like that? But anyway, so I saw him like in a person. He wasn't all fake. He really was a guy who would stand up for himself, speak up for himself. But I never really saw him as a revolutionary. I could be wrong, but I haven't seen anything revolutionary. But I saw when he got with Death Row and they got him out of jail on bail, and he started, doing the "How do you want it? How do you feel?" and doing all that, and getting with Snoop Dogg and Suge Knight. So I think he went from a more progressive rapper. He did that album Strictly for My Niggas, and he said niggas stand for never, ignorant, getting goals accomplished. But I think Tupac was more a product of the times. I think a lot of rappers, even had to be positive or have some positive slant. Even NWA, who were just utter degenerates, used to talk about we speaking about the streets. But I think it was unfortunate. I'm sad that he went to Rockefeller, or not Rockefeller. He went to Death Row Records and got mixed up with Suge Knight. But Tupac, again, he went to an art school. He was a great actor. He was a great performer. He was very charismatic. But I think his revolutionary credentials are as about as valid as his gangster credentials. I do think he was evolving. Again, snuffed out too early. Who's to say? But hell, Dr. King was evolving. I think Dr. King would have ultimately been a revolutionary. When you look at Dr. Du Bois, Dr. Du Bois was an Uncle Tom sellout Negro, but it took him to live to his damn near 80s before he became enlightened. And was like, I think Garvey, he never said it, but he demonstrated that Garvey was right and he was wrong. So I think that I have to go on record as saying this. I know people are not going to like that. I think Tupac's revolutionary credentials are as valid as his gangster credentials. Not that, but I do think he was concerned. I do think he was sincere in his concern for our people. I do think he did want better for us. But as far as that advancing past being, base level pro-blackness and positive black positivity, black empowerment, as opposed to standing opposition to the systems and institutions of our oppressors? I don't think so. But that's me. Um, why has the meaning of revolutionary been so corrupted? Black people really don't know what it means. Um, I think I don't see it as being corrupted. I think people either understand it or they don't. But remember, Chevrolet had a whole campaign saying it's the revolution. And so the word has been greatly bastardized and co-opted by, you know, even remember when Waka Flocka Flame came out with that song, I'll go hard in the paint. And he said it was a movement. Everything's a movement. Every that dies, instead of being murdered, they're assassinated. I remember Chris Rock had this comic routine where he said, it's really a sad state of affairs when the younger generations, and when by younger generation he meant my generation. He said when the younger generations are so deprived of real substantive black leadership that they have to go around talking about Tupac and Biggie were assassinated. And he said they weren't shot. Them niggas got shot. They weren't assassinated. So I think that language for many people doesn't carry the depth that it carries anymore. But so you can say it's revolutionary, a new revolutionary feature on your iPhone, a new revolutionary marketing technique, and a revolutionary style. So, and then revolutionary but gangster. So it's been bastardized, but in the arena of people who are really interested in revolution, there's still way too much valid information out there. So anyone who's really interested in understanding what real revolution is, subverting a dominant status quo or dominant paradigm and replacing that dominant status quo or paradigm with an alternative that is, what they call it, a mirror image or counter to that. I think that because there's still such a wellspring of revolutionary analysis and revolutionary information, the people who are confused about what revolution is and isn't, is because they don't want to be informed. But there's way too much information. I remember when I was 14 and 15 years old, we would have to go out and we had maybe like one Stokely Carmichael lecture on a VHS tape, and we pass it around to everybody. I mean, I can't imagine being able to just go online and pull up a William Mack. And before I was able to hear a William Mackey lecture, I graduated high school, went to enrolled in school in New York, and I had to go move and live and take up residence in New York before I was able to go to a William Mackey lecture, and I went to a Dr. Ben lecture, and I went to Professor Mackey's study group. Now I could do all of that from anywhere in the world and log on. So I think that actually people's understanding of revolution is actually better for the people interested in engaging in revolution. So and I think Black people don't know what it means because Black people, the masses, are not really interested in revolution. So it's kind of like sports. I know nothing about sports. I know LeBron James and Steph Curry. I know all the major backgrounds, like the major stuff that everybody else knows. I don't know the stats. I don't understand the particulars. I don't know any of the in-depth things related to chasing balls. But if I wanted to know, if I wanted to be informed, I could easily go and become very well informed and well abreast. And I could start watching ESPN and that one brother that smokes the Black and Milds. I see him everywhere. I could be informed. So sometimes if the people lack knowledge, but the knowledge is readily available, it's not really that the knowledge is corrupted. It's just that the community is not interested, or the community is distracted, or the community is indoctrinated against it. So I don't think there's so much a problem with revolution or understanding what revolution is. Our problem more so sits with revolutionizing or awakening or educating our people. Um, oh yeah, but y'all don't want to mess with Dita. Dita can throw down. So okay, there we go. All right, that problem's fixed. Had somebody TJW was spamming. Let's see. Yeah, I think the number one thing about Nipsey Hussle is that Nipsey Hussle was rich and famous. I think that, and everybody's trying to, nobody wants to go on and say, I really regret that we lost Nipsey Hussle because he was rich and famous. Nipsey Hussle owned some stuff. Nipsey Hussle said some good stuff. Nipsey Hussle had a array. I mean, I saw this one video. He's driving a Ferrari and a Bugatti, and I saw some song where he was talking about shoot nigga, kill nigga. I mean, Nipsey Hussle, like many of us, are very. Yeah, I do. You want to be one, Brown Eyed Queen? I'd love to add you as a moderator. So if you want to be a moderator, and I know you can be trusted, holla at your boy. I'm gonna do the lettuce thing. I just talked to my son. He said he'll shoot it. I'm gonna do the lettuce post. So get ready for that. I'm gonna burn some lettuce to get these likes. So I feel kind of bad for neglecting YouTube. So I'll do a couple of Facebook questions. I've been neglecting Facebook. Someone asked, do you and your wife homeschool your children? Yes, we homeschool our children, but I hate the term homeschool because homeschoolers are weird, fucking weirdos. I have not met a homeschooler who's not a fucking weirdo. And when we got here to Chicago, we started joining these various homeschooler groups and tried to put together, and they were all fucking weirdos. I think me, not even my wife, she's a nerd too, but I think I'm the only cool homeschooler on the planet. The rest of y'all fucking weirdos, and y'all give homeschooling a bad name. So yes, we homeschool our kids, but no, what we call it is community schooling. So our sons go out and take pottery and take music and just ride their skateboard, and we might go out and like I found this chrysalis, and I brought it home, and the chrysalis hatched, and then we went up to the butterfly conservatory to take this huge butterfly. I posted a picture on my Instagram. The thing was like this big, this huge, well, it wasn't a butterfly, it was a moth, and we took it up there and turned that hole, finding the chrysalis and hatching it into a lesson. So I call it community school or unschooling or non-schooling, like with the underground history of American education. So we just dwelling and see, they do their computer and they teach themselves. So yes and no. I just don't like that term. I don't like that term because homeschoolers are weird, and it's okay to acknowledge because you can't stop them from being weird until you acknowledge how damn weird they are. Okay, can't stand them, and I'll say some names if I have to. Yes, people making statements, they're not asking questions. But I agree with that statement. You got who made that statement? Okay, one more question from Facebook. Damn, Nipsey Hussle is just taking over my life. I think that Nipsey Hussle's ultimate impact has been positive because what Nipsey Hussle is doing is he's motivating people to be more mindful of everything from violence to Black entrepreneurship. He's also inspired yet another transient gang truce. And so if that allows a couple of brothers who otherwise would have been banging or assaulting people or being assaulted and banged on to live, or maybe even if it extends their life another month or two, it's all positive. We got to take what we can get. I don't think that, I'm sorry that it took a tragedy and now we have rappers on here making pronouncements about against violence. We have certain scumbag rappers like Kodak Black being threatened and called out. I wish he would have been called out when he dissed all dark-skinned Black women. I wish he had been canceled when he raped that girl or raped that other girl. But it's causing some people to get their comeuppance. It's causing some people to expose their hypocrisy and inconsistency. So there's some good things happening as a result. But there's also some bad things happening. But there are people that any conditions or outcomes, they will be able to manage to convert them into positive, and there's other people that's going to go negative no matter what the outcome is. But again, I'm not a fan of Nipsey Hussle. I don't think Nipsey Hussle life. The same weekend that Nipsey Hussle died, there were 19 Haitian refugees who drowned off the coast of Bermuda trying to come to the United States because they were literally escaping U.S. imperialism. And in a time where everybody's so sensitive about border issues, immigration issues, and refugee issues, I didn't see one black person share a link. I did, but I didn't see the outpouring of sympathy that didn't even acknowledge that almost 20 people died doing nothing but trying to secure a better life for their family, which is what Nipsey was trying to do. And if it wasn't for the Haitian Revolution, there wouldn't be no black liberation anywhere else outside of Africa, even within Africa. So, yeah, there's all of that. Oh, what? Okay. That's it. But please go to my YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube, and once I get to 1,000 subscribers, I can again broadcast the Bro Diallo radio show, which will be on 7 o'clock Central Standard Time tomorrow morning. Please go to YouTube, subscribe to YouTube, la la la, yada yada yada, so I can get it. And I really appreciate it. If I wasn't such a Dr. Umarian alpha male, I would cry, and because I'm so appreciative. I'm so hard, my tear ducts have calcified. That's just alpha male status. But if I wasn't such an alpha male, I'd give y'all a digital hug online because I really appreciate the outpouring that y'all value my show so much. Can I help you? No. I told him to go work at his desk. He's in his room work. Anyway. Oh. So that's that. Yeah. And so that's that. Oh, yeah. Somebody mentioned Ghana is withdrawing from the IMF. Yeah, I think that's a grand gesture. But even if you decide to, it's really no opting out of the IMF, really, because then comes the economic sanctions and the capital flights and all that other stuff that they do to engage in really is economic terrorism. But anyway, I'm signing off. Shout out to Ghana. Shout out to Africa. Shout out to Africans at home and abroad. Thank you for subscribing. We're close. We're at 890. I need to get up to 1,000 so that I can broadcast the Bro Diallo show on my YouTube again. They won't allow me to do it because I have under 1,000 subscribers. So I really appreciate the support. Please subscribe yourself to YouTube if you're not subscribed. If you are subscribed, please share the link and encourage other people to subscribe, and so that we can expand the community. And I'll see y'all tomorrow morning, not on YouTube because I'm still at 1,000, but you can catch me on Facebook Live, q4.org, and you can find all shows archived. Also, at the first of the month, the first week, oh man, it's after the first week, but I will be sending out appreciation gifts for my Patreon supporters. So check that because that is coming soon. And now I can't leave without my outro music. So as soon as the outro music's queued up, we out here. Here we go. I think I got my act together. Now here we go. It keeps automatic. Oh. All right, good night, y'all. Oh yeah. If you're a Patreon supporter and you're signed on for the appreciation items, I got to have your exact address. When you sign up on Patreon, I just cut and paste your address onto the label. I don't search the thing. So whatever address you put in there, that's what goes on and the way you put it. So the way you spell your name, the way you put your address, where you're from, everything. So please be very mindful of how you write your address on the Patreon site, because that's where I'm mailing it to. And every month when I mail out the appreciation gifts, I always got people come to say, I didn't get my gift, and then they just left something out or didn't spell something right. And the U.S. Postal Service, they cracking down on that. I just got a letter in the mail saying you even get a letter saying this is how you have to write your mail. And they're handling so much more mail because of this Amazon phenomenon. All right, y'all.